Welcome back to our channel. Today's story will leave you speechless. A powerful tale of courage, loyalty, and unexpected heroes. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to support us. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Now sit back and relax. Let's get started. It was a cold, windy night in rural Texas. The highway stretched endlessly under a blanket of stars, and the only light for miles came from a small roadside diner called Lee's Roadhouse. Inside, the faint hum of a jukebox mixed with the soft clinking of dishes. Martha Lee, a strong, middle-aged black woman with kind eyes and silver streaks in her hair, waited down the counter, waiting for her last customer to finish his coffee. The man sitting there wasn't like her usual travelers. He was a Hell's Angel, big, rough, wearing a black leather vest covered with patches and road dust. His knuckles were bruised, and a thin cut ran across his cheek. But his eyes told a different story. Tired, lonely, and maybe just lost. "You look like you've been through a storm," Martha said, pouring him another cup of coffee. He gave a dry chuckle. "Something like that, ma'am. Just needed a quiet spot." Before Martha could reply, flashing red and blue lights cut through the windows. Two police cruisers screeched into the gravel lot outside. The biker stiffened, his hand tightening around the mug. Moments later, two officers burst through the door, hands on their holsters. "There he is," one barked. "You're under arrest for assault, you piece of trash." The diner went silent. Martha looked between the biker and the officers. "Hold on," she said calmly. "He's been here for over an hour. He didn't start any trouble." "Stay out of this, ma'am," the taller cop snapped. "This man's a known gang member." "I don't care who he is," Martha replied, stepping forward, her voice steady.
"I saw his hands."
"I saw his face. He came in bleeding, not swinging." The officers hesitated. The biker looked stunned. No one had stood up for him like that before. One of the cops muttered something about taking him in anyway, but Martha crossed her arms and shook her head. "You'll have to drag me out first," she said firmly. For a long moment, no one moved. The diner clock ticked loudly. Finally, the shorter officer sighed, looked at his partner and said, "Let's go. We'll handle this later." They left with a glare, tires kicking up dust as they sped away. Silence returned to the diner. The biker sat there, looking at Martha in disbelief. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. Martha shrugged. "Everyone deserves fairness, even you." He smiled faintly for the first time. "Name's Ryder. Martha Lee," she said, shaking his rough hand. He finished his coffee, left a $20 bill on the counter, and walked out into the cold night. As the sound of his motorcycle faded into the darkness, Martha watched from the window, wondering if she'd ever see him again. She had no idea that by the next sunrise, the quiet diner would never be the same, and the rumble of 200 engines would shake her world forever. The next morning, the Texas sun rose over the empty highway, painting the horizon in gold and amber. Martha Lee unlocked the door of Lee's Roadhouse diner, humming softly to herself. The events of last night still replayed in her mind. The police, the tension, and that biker Ryder, who had thanked her before riding off into the dark. She wasn't sure why she'd stepped in, but deep down, she knew it was the right thing to do. She switched on the neon open sign and began her usual routine, brewing coffee, flipping the Today's Special board, and setting the tables. The diner was her life, her late husband's dream and her pride. She didn't have much, but she had built this place with her own two hands. Around 8 a.m., as Martha stood by the window refilling the sugar jars, she heard a faint rumble in the distance. At first, she thought it was thunder, but the sky was perfectly clear. The sound grew louder and deeper, rolling like a storm made of metal. Her hands froze. Then she saw them. From beyond the highway curve, dozens, no hundreds, of motorcycles appeared, roaring toward her diner. Their headlights gleamed in the sunlight, chrome flashing like silver lightning. Martha stepped outside, shielding her eyes as the first row of bikers pulled in, followed by row after row, filling every inch of her gravel lot. When the engines finally died down, the silence was deafening. Then from the center of the crowd, Ryder stepped forward, removing his helmet. His face broke into a smile. "Morning, Miss Martha," he said. "Hope you don't mind some company." Martha's mouth opened, but no words came out. She glanced around. There had to be over 200 bikers, all wearing the Hells Angels insignia. Some looked rough and intimidating, but their eyes carried respect, not menace. What's all this?" she finally asked. Ryder chuckled. "Word travels fast in our family. You stood up for one of us when no one else would. We don't forget that." Martha blinked, speechless, as the bikers began to park neatly, remove their helmets, and line up outside her door. Then one of them shouted, "We're hungry, ma'am!" and laughter rippled through the crowd. Within minutes, the diner, which usually served a handful of truckers and locals, was packed wall to wall with leather jackets and roaring laughter. Martha and her 2 young helpers scrambled to cook, flipping pancakes and frying bacon faster than ever before. Each biker ordered generously, tipping even more. Some cleaned tables, others helped carry plates. A few even fixed her broken neon light outside. Ryder leaned on the counter, grinning. "Told you, Martha, the angels take care of their own." As she looked around the diner, now buzzing with warmth and gratitude, Martha realized something incredible. The woman who once stood alone against injustice was now surrounded by 200 unlikely protectors, and the day had only just begun. By noon, the dusty parking lot of Lee's Roadhouse Diner had turned into a sight no one in the small Texas town would ever forget. 200 motorcycles gleamed under the blazing sun, lined up in perfect formation. Reporters and curious locals gathered on the roadside, snapping pictures and whispering in disbelief. It wasn't every day that the Hells Angels rolled into town, and certainly not for something like this. Inside the diner, the air was thick with laughter, the clatter of dishes, and the smell of bacon and coffee. The once quiet place was alive. Martha Lee moved between tables, smiling as she refilled mugs and exchanged stories with men who looked like they'd seen every mile of America's highways. "You sure this ain't too much for you, Miss Martha?" one biker asked, handing her a $100 bill for a $10 meal. She laughed softly. "Honey, after last night, this feels like a blessing." Across the counter, Ryder sat with a news reporter who had arrived from Dallas. Cameras flashed and microphones pointed his way. When asked why they came, Ryder's voice was steady but filled with emotion. "Because a good woman stood up when no one else did," he said. "She didn't care about the patches on my back. She cared about what was right. That's rare in this world." The room fell silent for a moment. Then applause erupted from every corner of the diner. Even the reporters smiled. Outside, a police cruiser pulled up. The same 2 officers from the night before stepped out, clearly uneasy. The crowd of bikers watched closely as they approached the door. But this time there was no tension. The taller officer removed his hat and said quietly, "Ma'am, we owe you an apology." Martha nodded, her voice calm as ever. "Apology accepted. Maybe next time you'll look before you judge." The officer nodded and smiled faintly. Then, surprising everyone, he asked, "Mind if we grab a cup of coffee?" Ryder laughed loudly. Now that's the Texas spirit. The entire diner broke into laughter again, and soon even the police were sitting among the bikers, eating pie, drinking coffee, and talking like old friends. By evening, the sun dipped low, casting long golden rays over the diner. One by one, the bikers started their engines, the sound echoing through the countryside like thunder. Ryder hugged Martha before putting on his helmet. "You ever need us, just call," he said. "You've got family now." As they rode off into the sunset, the roar of engines faded slowly, leaving behind silence and a heart full of warmth. Martha stepped outside, wiping a tear as she looked up at the diner's new hand-painted sign. Open to all. No judgment. Just coffee. The next morning, when news of the event spread across America, people called her the Angel of Texas, but Martha just smiled, pouring coffee for a new customer. "Just doing what's right," she said, and meant every word.